Whether it's a hot time in Florida or a rainy night in Georgia,
living with trouble.
It's the perfect time for the TCBcast, an unofficial Elvis fan podcast.
Oh, yes, sir. Good to see you go from this black fix bring you the hottest thing in the country, real hot and blue, coming to WHB in Memphis, Tennessee.
With your hosts, Justin Gosman and Gurdip Ladar. The TCBcast is on the air.
Welcome to TCBcast, an unofficial Elvis Presley fan podcast. I'm Justin Gosman.
I'm Gurdip Ladar.
Gurdip, you're awake.
I am. We're doing an early morning one.
We are. Yeah, listeners, this is being recorded very quickly after the most recent episode with Beck, the American Sound Sessions, because we knew everyone's watching Agent Elvis. We gotta give our impressions of Agent Elvis. So, Gurdip, you haven't had a lot of time to digest too much.
I quickly watched the first 3 episodes, which is what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, but so all the Elvis news and stuff like that, whatever happens in the next amount of time since that episode comes out, we haven't heard it yet. But I will ask you, just so that you can say what you feel about it, because obviously Beck and I talked about it, but what do you think of Austin's and the Elvis film overall not doing so well at the Oscars?
Yeah, it was interesting. I had a feeling once it started losing the earlier categories, especially stuff like costume design.
Yeah.
I was like, I think they're leading. Usually you have one darling film at the Oscars. It seems like everyone's choosing that, and that film was that Everything Everywhere All at Once. So I was like, it's probably not going to happen. And even The Whale, I think it got 2 Oscars. So I was like, I have a feeling it's not going to go well for Elvis, and it did. But it's fine, whatever. It's just, as I was saying before, it's just rich people patting themselves on the back. I mean, it's not like we lost anything. We at least got a good film that did well in the box office and brought Elvis to the limelight, and Austin won a few awards.
Yeah,
I mean, that's fine.
Totally. So before we dive into our main topic, we're going to do a little bit of trivia, but I just got to thank, just this morning, we have a new Patreon backer, McLeod Allen Mueller-Hill. Thank you for joining up on the Patreon as well. So let's go ahead and dive in for trivia. You just rolled out of bed and you got to answer trivia. This is going to be fun.
Thank you for that.
Oh yeah, it's going to be
Appreciate
fantastic. Yeah, it's great. All right, question number 1. What was the name of Elvis's mother's dog? Multiple choice here. Multiple choice, Gurdip.
Okay.
Sweet Pea, Honey, or Shep?
Well, I know it's not Shep because that would be bizarre. It's either Sweet Pea or Honey. It's just a toss-up. I have no idea what it is, so I'll just say Honey.
That is incorrect. Honey was Priscilla's dog.
I heard
Sweet
that
Pea.
name, so...
Yeah.
There's a song by Tommy Roll called Sweet Pea that's really good. It's one of those bubblegum pop 60s songs.
Ah, nice.
See, if you asked me about that, I could have answered it. But
Yeah.
when you go with Elvis's mom's dog's name, it's like, why would you know this? Why would you know this? Is this something you looked up?
Well, I mean, it was on the trivia card, but I did actually know.
Card.
I actually wouldn't have known Sweet Pea, but I knew by process of elimination Honey and Shep, because there is. I remember way back when I first read Careless Love. There's a picture of Priscilla holding Honey in the book, and it like the little description. So I just always remember that one photo of the dog and Priscilla.
And it says Honey.
Yeah,
it says,
yeah.
And you remembered that.
For some reason that sticks in it's weird things that stick. But you'll like this next one. It is actually song related. Which of these European cities was not mentioned in any Elvis song? Naples, Paris, or Vienna?
Oh. Paris?
That is incorrect.
What was it?
The answer is Vienna. And you can find both Naples and Paris in I Love Only One Girl.
In Paris there is Mimi, and when the moon is bright, I love to take her walking along the Seine each night. In Naples there's Maria, how she can cook and flirt. You can't beat her lasagna, I eat until
Oh, that's right.
In Paris there is Mimi.
That's right.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Okay, here's one for all of our 70s concert lovers. What year did J.D. Sumner and the Stamps join the Elvis show? Now, if you want, I can do multiple choice, but if you want to take a shot in the dark, too, you can.
Yeah, you know how much of a fan I am of J.D. Sumner, so. Was it 71?
That's correct. It was 71.
There you go.
Got it. Which of these following is not the title of a real recording by Homer and Jethro parodying an Elvis hit? Clean That Ring Around Your Neck, Heartbreak Motel, or Are You Lonesome Tonight?
I don't even think I've ever heard any of their songs. I have no idea, so I'll say that ring around your neck.
Are you lonesome tonight? If you are, serve you right. I'm so happy you left me at last.
Down at the Heartbreak Motel, my room, it was so small. Every time I tried to smile, my teeth would touch the wall.
But I'm a staying and a paying. I ain't got room to change my mind.
That is correct.
Oh,
that was not a real song, not a
Did
real
you know
parody.
this?
I did not know that, but I have heard their version of Are You Lonesome Tonight before, which is pretty funny.
Okay.
And the last question, name at least one Elvis song that mentions snow that is not a Christmas song.
Huh. It's not a Christmas. Huh. That's a hard one. That's a good one though. It's not a Christmas song. Yeah, I don't know. I can't think of that right now. What is it?
I was able to find at least three. There's Snowbird.
Beneath this snowy mantle, cold and clean, the unborn grass lies waiting for its coat to turn to green.
There's When the Snow is on the Roses, a live recording.
When the snow is on the roses.
And then In the Ghetto.
As the snow flies on a cold and gray Chicago morning, a poor little baby child is born in the ghetto.
Oh, crap. Yeah. Yes, that's right. Yeah. It's too early. Trust me. It's too early to think.
Oh, good. All right. Let's go ahead and dive in talking about the first 3 episodes of Agent Elvis. Now, this is not a review, and this is not a proper TCBcast analysis. This is a just general impressions. There is so much that is... The series is actually serialized, and so it's actually tough to really talk that much about what the show does thematically or over the course of the entire series without giving you a chance to really sit and process the whole first season as a whole.
Yeah. What's been the reaction of this show?
Well, as you can expect, divisive in a lot of ways. The
Isn't that with
overall
anything Elvis related?
True, but overall the critical reviews are mostly positive from actual media outlets doing reviews. Elvis fans very divided. Naturally, as I mentioned on our Facebook page, I am living for all of the pearl clutching that's going on.
Do you think this is one of those age gap things where the older fans are not digging it? I mean, obviously there's exceptions, but I mean, is that, do you think, a majority of it, or?
Some of it's generational, but some of it is also just what's your level of familiarity with adult animation and the types of tropes and typical styles of adult animation. And even within generational gaps, layer on the fact that there is still a lot of people that think that animation should just be for children. And that hasn't been the case for a very, very long time. Like other adult animation shows, there's a lot of sex, there's a lot of violence and gore and profanity.
I was taken aback by the amount of profanity.
Were you?
Yeah, I mean, not that I'd mind it, because
No.
I mean, how many films have I watched? But I just didn't think they were going to go that deep on a known property that
on an
has in the
Elvis
past.
branded show. Like, this is an official product.
Yeah, like if this was par for the course for an Elvis property, I'd be like, whatever. But you never get anything like this.
No, this is spectacular. I love how balls
so
to the wall
out there.
this goes.
I think that might be the reason why people have an issue, because Elvis is, even when he was alive, he was presented as somebody wholesome and very scandal-free.
Well, and that's the thing I'm seeing in a lot of. I was looking on like the official Facebook pages for Elvis, for Graceland, for some of these other things, and there were a lot of people going, "Oh, this is a cartoon. It should have been family friendly. This should have been for a new generation of kids." And it's like, first off, that's not how it was marketed to begin with. So if you weren't paying attention, that's on you. But also, just like, that's not the point of the show. Like,
I wonder if that's another generational gap thing where people think cartoons should always be for kids, and they haven't watched anything, no adult cartoons at all, because there's a lot out there.
There's a lot out there nowadays. And not only that, but like, one of the huge influences on Agent Elvis, besides Archer, for obvious reasons, there's also a lot of anime influence on this. And you can definitely tell, just looking through the profile pictures and stuff, it's people who probably don't watch anime at all. Never watched an episode of an anime show in their life.
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of those people, but I have seen ultra-violent films, so this is not...
Oh, yeah, Tarantino-esque type stuff.
Yeah. So this is not something that I'm like, oh my God. I wasn't clutching my pearls just yet.
But it is shocking to realize when you actually contextualize it and go, oh, this is an actual Elvis brand-approved product. Is coming out, and the fact that not only does it have the violence and the profanity, but also like just some of the audacity to do some of the things that it does. I have to really like. I have my problems with this series now that I've like finished all of season 1, but overall I really liked it. But I admire the audacity to do it and to just say, "F it, we're just going to do it."
So he starts laying in the profanity right now.
Oh, yeah. By the way, if you don't like that oftentimes we use profanity on the show, buckle in or get off the train here, because this show makes us look like frickin' Sesame Street by comparison. And by the way, like, again, you were talking about how Elvis was always presented as very clean cut and very stand-up and things like that.
He has all these religious albums,
Right.
The thing is, though, I got to give people a break, though, as well, because you never saw that side of Elvis, really, if you were growing up an Elvis fan. Like, that stuff came out later. Yeah. So, if you see Elvis as a wholesome figure, and you're not, like, a deep fan like we are, where we have FTDs and what have you, you still think Elvis is like that. So, I got to give some people a break. They're like, this is how I was presented Elvis. So, now... like, everyone's saying it's not, so my worlds are kind of conflicting here. So I do have to say, like, it makes sense that some people would think that Elvis was wholesome, because that's all they saw. Yeah,
no, it makes sense that people have that image of Elvis, because that's what they were presented. I mean, that's basically what his entire movie career was built upon, was building this brand that was very family-friendly and clean-cut.
Yeah, he released religious albums, and you think, wow, this is a really nice boy, like Ed Sullivan would say.
Dear Georgie, listen, you little cocksucker. I've had about enough of these slant-eyed letters from you. I get any more of this shit, I'll cut your little samurai Peter off. That's what she said now.
I'll take the piss in every fountain, say a prayer that you'll return.
She's wearing a ring that I brought on her bride. Oh, you fucked up for you, that makeup.
Would I still see CC fuck you brighter? I'm going back down to Memphis. I'm gonna start driving that motherfucking truck again. Ooh. I said I'm going back down home to Memphis. I'm gonna start driving that goddamn truck again.
It's funny. I had this. I had the show on when my wife was sitting there, and she looked up when she heard all this profanity and violence. She just got up and left it. She's not into that kind of stuff at all.
Yeah, which is fair. And so that's the other thing is that as I was saying, this is going to be a very divisive show. There's a lot of legitimate criticism. Like, I overall like the show, but I would probably we don't do ratings on TCBcast because I think like there's no nuance in that. But if you like stuck a gun to my head and said give it an out of 10, I'd probably be in like the 6.5 out of 10 range. Like still very much on the warm, I liked it side of the 10 scale. But there are enough quibbles that I have with it that this would not be my, like, oh God, this show was great. Everything about it was fantastic. But, my overall impression having gone through the whole season is like, this was good. It was a good show. So yeah, you've seen 3 episodes. I've seen the full series.
I'm surprised you had time to watch the whole thing.
Well, I delayed editing the last episode so I could binge it. And the reason why I wanted to binge it is that so I came into this with an understanding of what the arc of the show was, because as it turns out, this is not an episodic show.
Yeah, it's like the conflict of the day, and that gets wrapped up at the end of the episode, and there's very little continuity between the episodes. This kind of is like, it has a through line throughout the thing, and they reference previous episodes and stuff. So.
And that's why you and we were talking initially about doing just episode 1 and just talking about that, but then I realized as I got in like after episode 1, I was like, oh no, we can't just do episode 1. We have to at least do a couple more so that you get a sense of where the show's going. And the other thing about episode 1, too, is that it has very strong pilot episode vibes.
Yeah.
There's a lot that feels like it's really trying to shock you into establishing the new tone. It's trying to set up all of the characters and all of the new players in the show. Even like having Priscilla in there feels more of like an obligation of like we have to set up that Priscilla is in the show rather than like really having a reason for her to be there. Because basically like in the first episode, Elvis just calls her and says hello and catches up with her.
Do you think they would even included her if she was not one of the producers?
I think they would have.
Okay.
But I think there's a case to be made that the show is actually weaker for having her presence because they're really trying to drive the idea of Elvis as a little more wholesome is not quite the right description given the show, but they don't depict Elvis as womanizing at all. Like, he is completely locked in with Priscilla. And I don't think that would be the case if she wasn't voicing herself and if she wasn't an executive producer on the show. Especially given that she's actually not in the show that much. She pops up here and there, but there's really only one episode where she's there for any substantial amount of time.
Right. Yeah.
So,
before we get into it, just one thing. So you weren't offended by the profanity at all, right?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah. Now, question: personal life. How often do you cuss?
It goes back and forth. You know, obviously in professional contexts, at work or whatever like that. I don't. But I have no qualms about profanity. I think that, those lines in the sand are sort of arbitrary, as far as I'm concerned. I think the sort of again, the sort of pearl clutching about, oh God, there is profanity. Like, you had people who were upset that, like, in the film, Elvis said "goddamn," in the Baz Luhrmann movie, and it's like there's a lot of recordings of Elvis saying "goddamn."
I don't even think that, to me, that's not really a curse. But me myself, I really don't swear very much.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, usually when I'm talking with friends outside of my whole family thing, I'll let loose a bit more. But generally, when I'm at home, or when I was in front of my parents or whatever, I was like a choir boy. I don't curse at all, especially because I just don't want my kids to be around that and thinking that for some reason. But my wife swears more than me, and she hardly ever swears. So that's how. But I don't have a problem with it, really.
Yeah.
I mean, if other people do it, I'm not like, oh, look at this. I'm not a judgy person who thinks this dude is poorly educated and all he can think of is using a four-letter word. Right. So I don't have a problem with it. I just don't do it that much either. It's funny. Earlier you said, if listeners are not or get upset with us cussing this, usually in the past, you better strap in tight. But I'm like, I really don't cuss on the show, I don't think.
Not often, no. But Becky and I definitely let loose.
Yeah, you guys are more into that.
Yeah. But it comes from, just...
It's emphasizing a point.
It's an emphasizing of the point. And there is definitely an aspect to Agent Elvis that is... It's not to emphasize a point, it's just to be profane for the sake of it. But that's the point of the show. There's violence for violence sake. There's profanity for profanity's sake. As part of the humor. And that is not going to work for a lot of people. And that's okay.
No. They knew that going in, probably.
Right. And that's what I mean by if you're upset by that, you got to strap in, because that is the series. And if you don't like that, then you're not going to have a good time. And that's okay. I need you to understand that that's okay that you don't like it.
Yeah.
But in order to discuss the show as it is, I just don't think it's useful clutching our pearls and saying, oh no, how terrible they made Elvis curse.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. That makes sense. Yeah. And if you're not into it, you don't have to be into every Elvis property, right?
No. And if I'm entirely honest, I kind of actually respect the series more that it is not trying to just please everyone and pander. Because
and if you one last thing, if you don't like this show and you don't like this review or you want to skip it, you can skip it. We'll go back to our regularly scheduled program later with our songs of the week and topics about Elvis's films and songs. It's just because this is an Elvis property that is like almost like it's a TV series about Elvis. We have to cover it, and we're going to cover it because we actually enjoy it. I enjoyed it. So I mean, if you're not into it, we totally understand if you want to skip.
Right. But that being said, it's important to keep in mind this is an animated project. This is not depicting actual Elvis Presley. And that could not be made more abundantly clear. It is definitely inspired by Elvis. It is a fictionalized version of Elvis Presley. If you're going into this show looking for any insights into the actual real Elvis Presley, you will not find it. You have to already know about the real Elvis to really appreciate what the show does and pulls from and is inspired by the real Elvis. But you will not. This is not a biopic. This is not biographical. This is completely this is even more so than Bubba Hotep. Just straight up fiction.
A work of fiction. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Although the likeness is pretty good, I have to admit.
Yeah, the animation style. So let's go ahead and talk really quickly about the animation style. What do you think overall, just with having seen the first 3 episodes?
I've seen other things, other shows that are similar, but I like this style. It's Sony, so I like the stylized look. Like if you guys saw Spider-Man, what was that called? The multiverse one.
Into the Spider-Verse.
Into the Spider-Verse. That also had like a stylized look to it. I think that's what Sony's really digging into because that did so well. So they're not opposed to doing something like this. Like like the opposite of this would be the traditional animation that Disney does. Yeah. I like the stylized look. It really adds a lot to it. And you probably watch animated and cartoon stuff way more than I do. So, what about you? What did you think of this?
Yeah, the wonderful thing about the way that this is animated is that you could almost take still frames from this, with especially scene transitions and how they frame certain shots. You could probably take screenshots of this and pretty easily just slap them in order and create an Elvis comic book out of this.
Oh, yeah.
That's how stylized it is, but it's very, very artistically motivated. A lot of the shot composition is just really fantastic. And there's a lot of like split screen stuff where they split the screen either, straight up and down or across. There's playing with aspect ratios a lot. I don't know if you noticed that. But
oh yeah, I never noticed it, but you're right.
There's a lot where, because the show is presented in 16:9 widescreen, but there's a lot where it will go suddenly, very like cinematic widescreen, or it will go very narrow, and then layer in split screens, which ties into the 60s and 70s aesthetic as well. As we know, unlike a film like Elvis on Tour or a show like Aloha from Hawaii, that was very common. It does a great like visual way of setting it in the era.
Like comic book panels.
Yeah, and then the comic book influence in there as well.
And they'll have stills too. Sometimes they'll drop in stills with very little animation just to emphasize a point. Like if a car crashes, you'll see just still images of a car slowly moving, but it's not really an animation.
Yeah, and that's very, very influenced by anime. That's very common in anime.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's talk about the characters, because you have Elvis played by Matthew McConaughy. What do you think of his Elvis?
Oh, I think he's fine. He doesn't do the Elvis voice or anything, but because this is such a weird version of Elvis that maybe putting in a Elvis-y voice would have been also odd. It would be. I think it kind of fits. What do you like? Do you like it?
What I liked about it is that by about the third episode in, I just kind of stopped thinking about him as like Elvis Presley and started thinking of him more as Elvis the character.
Yeah.
And you start to see him as his own kind of defined character in the series, which I really appreciate. Like, you're not constantly, at least I wasn't constantly comparing to the real Elvis and going, oh, can I imagine this, the real Elvis in this situation? I was just like, yeah, I buy this character as this character, inspired by Elvis. You've got his friends, Bobby Ray, played by Johnny Knoxville, Scatter, voiced by famed voice actor Tom Kenny, the voice of SpongeBob SquarePants, among so many others, and then Birdie, who is basically his caretaker, sort of a housekeeper, but she doesn't really housekeep, but she seems very inspired by Alberta Holman, who was one of Elvis's real maids, but she's played by Niecy Nash. But what do you think of the three kind of friends around Elvis?
I like Scatter the best.
Yeah.
It's just so out there. And it's weird that they took this small little aspect of the real Elvis's life, because he had a chimpanzee for most of the 60s, I think. Yeah. And just created this outlandish, bizarre, violent character. It's so fun to have him. I don't know if I mentioned my son watched some of it with me, and he's like, "Oh, I love this Scatter character." He's like, "Did Elvis really have a chimpanzee?" I'm like, "Funny you should ask."
Yeah. So that's one thing that we haven't really talked about much on TCBcast, but like we have to acknowledge like how bizarre it is. Like Elvis owned a chimpanzee. Like that's not a thing people do. Like that's just it was a very weird thing.
Unless you're Michael Jackson.
Well, again, that's also a very weird situation.
Right. And apparently the real Scatter would drink and smoke.
Yeah, that's the Memphis Mafia and Elvis teaching Scatter to do things, and corrupting him. But the eccentricities of Elvis are borrowed, in this series. And yet the show plays with Elvis in such a way where it acknowledges his eccentricities and his problematic aspects, has characters call him on his bullshit, and then flips it just enough to give you a little bit of sympathy or empathy or understanding for why Elvis may have had the particular mindset that he had. There's almost a part of it that to me feels almost like it's more the people in charge of Elvis's brand embracing the more tabloidy conspiracy aspects of the Elvis phenomenon as a way of inoculating new Elvis fans who came off the movie and find him really sympathetic, and just saying, hey, these are some of the things that are out there about Elvis, and we're going to take a little bit of the piss out of it and take a little bit of ownership of it.
So who's this Bobby Ray? Who's that supposed to be?
Bobby Ray is, they make this distinct in the dialogue, he is not a member of the Memphis Mafia. No. The Memphis Mafia do not show up in this show at all. They're just not there. And he mentions at one point that he hopes to join the ranks of the Memphis Mafia, but he seems like he's mostly just an Elvis fan who also just happens to be a friend of Elvis's and hanging out. He's sort of a hillbilly tech genius that comes out, and that part comes out throughout the show, where he's got a lot of technical knowledge, a lot of mechanical knowledge, and he can drive, pilot just about anything under the sun in terms of vehicles. So he becomes very much a sidekick for Elvis.
Yeah, so this is essentially a made-up character.
Is completely fictionalized. And it's worth noting that Johnny Knoxville did previously play Sonny West in Elvis and Nixon with Michael Shannon.
So obviously they had to get rights to the real Memphis Mafia.
Right, so they sidestep all of that.
Yeah.
And then lastly, the big other cast members, there's Cece Ryder, played by Kaitlin Olson. She is an agent of the Central Bureau, which is the sort of underground spy agency that basically drafts Elvis into its service. And she is sort of a counterpart to Elvis, sort of his superior officer, but she is a field agent still, so she's out there on the missions with him. And then her superior is the commander, voiced by Don Cheadle. And Don Cheadle's the commander is another excellent character in the show. He's like if Nick Fury was obsessed with sex.
Yeah, no, like he's in charge of S.H.I.E.L.D. And then even CC Ryder looks like Black Widow from the Avengers. Or even Emma Peel from the British Avengers TV show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which was also in the 60s, so maybe she's more like that. I don't know.
Yeah. No, there's definitely, a connection there. But yeah, so the gist of the show is that Elvis gets conscripted into a secret spy agency called TCB, the Central Bureau. But yeah, let's go ahead and dive into episode 1. Now, episode 1, the description of the episode that Netflix gives is as he prepares for his comeback special, Elvis gets targeted by the Manson family while a covert organization seeks to recruit him to its ranks. What did you think of episode 1, Full Tilt?
Yeah, this was a great intro. I thought it was very fun. I like some of the inside jokes, and I kind of had a feeling like I didn't read that little description because that kind of spoils who the main antagonist of that episode is.
It does.
But as soon as Elvis walked into that set and those three girls, they looked very Manson-ish type of girls. I was like, I wonder if they're going to go that way. And then all of a sudden they did go that way. And I was like, oh, crap, Charlie Manson. And that connection to Austin Butler because he played Tex from the Manson family in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So I was like, wow, there's all these weird connections going on. But it was an interesting choice. I think a lot of people might have had an issue using a real live, not really a serial killer, but like a cult leader who forced people to kill.
Yeah.
They might have a problem with that. But I thought it was fine. I mean, it makes sense in this setting because Manson did not like a lot of these, what does he call them, like piggies, rich people who he thought he was better than. Elvis definitely wouldn't be on a list like this. So it made sense. What do you think?
Yeah, that was one of the critiques that I saw, is that Agent Elvis does this weird thing where it uses historical characters as basically caricatures of what they were, and as cartoonized versions, like literally and figuratively. they're all stereotypes. But Elvis is the one character who's based on someone historical. They try to extend him a little more grace because he's the protagonist of the show, and they try to humanize him in a certain respect that they don't extend to the other historical characters that they play upon. And there's a lot of historical cameos throughout the series, oftentimes just as like one-off gags. Like right at the beginning, when the producer of the 68 Comeback Special, who is not Bender or Howe, suggests that the 68 Special be more of a Christmas angle, they bring in Tiny Tim and the Elvis Elves for, sort of the Christmas setup. And you have this wonderful little Tiny Tim, visual cameo.
I wish he would have sung Tiptoe Through the Tulips. Just even a little, just a little bit.
Yeah.
It would have been fun.
Yeah. Because that's what Elvis did during the filming of the 68 Special.
Do you think they knew that?
Yes,
he did that little
100%. I guarantee you. So the thing about the series overall is that there are so many references that are so deep.
Way deep.
That, you have to be a lover of the 68 through, 73 era of American history. And you also have to be a really, really deep Elvis fan to appreciate it. So again, as I was saying, you kind of need to already know a lot about Elvis to appreciate the little winks and nods that are sprinkled throughout, because it's someone else wouldn't catch that this is a reference to something that happened or something that did happen in real life. Again, not remotely accurate to history, but it's referencing something or paying homage to something that happened in history.
Yeah. And this version of Elvis is essentially a vigilante when he's not being, as an actor or a singer. And he goes out with Scatter and Bobby Ray, and he takes down drug dealers and what have you. And that's what he does on the side. And it looks like Birdie, his right-hand woman, knows about this, and there's only a select few who know about it. I don't know if Priscilla knows about it. Does she?
No, she doesn't seem to indicate that she knows that much about it. And there's an episode later in the series where Elvis is trying to sort of hide it from her, that's what's going on.
Yeah.
So that comes back later in the series.
Yeah.
So Elvis gets into a limo and there's an assassin who attempts to kill him.
Right.
And they torture Elvis or mock him by sticking in an 8-track tape of Robert Goulet.
And the song's If I Ever Would Leave You.
If ever I would leave you, it wouldn't be in summer. Seeing you in summer, I never would go. Your hair streaked with sunlight, your lips red as flame, your face with a luster that puts gold to shame.
That's so much. That's so fun. And I looked it up. Apparently, the song is from a musical called Camelot, in which Goulet actually performed the song in this play. And just a side note, and this is a really deep cut. I don't even know if they intended it. Roddy McDowall was in that same production of Camelot.
That's amazing.
He played Caesar in Planet of the Apes, which Scatter apparently loves.
Yeah, because there's a billboard that passes early in, when they're in the limo and you see Planet of the Apes, and then later on there's another reference to Planet of the Apes later. It's got to be intentional because there's so much later in the series. Spoiler alert, again, there's a Kurt Russell reference later on that it's completely okay, this is acknowledging Kurt Russell, Elvis, Disney, all those things.
Yeah.
So would not surprise me if they knew that tidbit. Also, the Robert Goulet stuff ends up being way more important to the overall series than you will realize. It ends up being a huge plot thing. So Elvis has this assassin attempt to kill him. He fights him off. They crash through a Richard Nixon presidential billboard. Guitar Man plays over a fight between Elvis and the limo driver. So this is the thing. Real Elvis music sprinkled throughout the show. Usually one song per episode, occasionally two. And in this episode, we get two. And Guitar Man is the first one. It's the 68 special version of Guitar Man. Huge fight scene. And then they knock the guy out, take him hostage, take him back to their house in L.A. We saw the scene in the preview where he's interrogating the assassin limo driver. Scatter shoots him due to a misunderstanding. There's this thing that out by the pool, Scatter has collected a whole bunch of TVs from this motel to throw into the air for Elvis to shoot after the assassin gets killed. And they're walking through the process of who would want to kill Elvis. And Bobby Ray is talking about, was it this person that you went after, or is it this group of people that you went after?
Yeah.
Just very quick little gags. But there was an interesting one where they talk about that there was a person that a mobster that Elvis killed while he was in Florida doing a Sinatra show, which is clearly a reference to the Timex special. I
just wish Elvis looked the way he did in that Timex special. But they just essentially just took the Elvis, what's currently in the series, and put him in the tuxedo. But I wish they would have had his hair shorter. It would have been so much better.
Yeah, which is weird because they definitely made a quote-unquote young Elvis model character for some flashbacks that end up showing up later in the series. So it's weird that they chose to do that for that one shot. So Elvis goes back to the NBC studio, makes this demand that he's not going to do a Christmas show and that he's going to do a statement and do rock and roll, and that they talk about, Scotty and DJ are already on the plane and it's going to be all rock and roll. And then, as you mentioned, the fans rock up at the studio, or they're actually members of the Manson cult posing as fans. And then, just as Elvis is being threatened by them, CC Ryder shows up and fights off the assassins posing as fans.
Yeah. And CC Ryder's depicted, at least in the first 3 episodes, is not a fan of Elvis.
No, she is very much a pushing back against Elvis at all times.
In fact, she thinks he's ancient. His music's ancient. She's more into whatever's current in the 60s.
Yes. Since we're only covering the first 3 episodes, I can't tell you the spoilers from the end of the series, but there's actually a potential lore reason for why she doesn't like Elvis as much, on top of the fact that she is this foil who voices the perspectives of kind of calling Elvis out on his bullshit as a character. But Elvis, so Cece disappears very quickly, and Elvis, Scatter, and Bobby Ray track her down to sort of a tiki room themed club,
which includes Dean Martin.
Yeah, I love that cameo. Dean Martin shows up a couple times in the show, and again, it's one of those visual cameos. Never says a word. There's no impersonator or celebrity doing the voice. It's just, let's just throw Dean Martin in there. But yeah, so they're at this tiki room themed restaurant where they find Cece at the booth, and she reveals that it's the Manson family who wants him dead. And then the Manson family shows up, knocks Bobby Ray out, and so Elvis has to go retrieve him with Scatter and Cece at the Manson Ranch.
And Scatter has a gun pointed at Cece the whole time.
Yes.
And she's like, whatever this is.
But yeah, so then as they're driving to the Manson Ranch, there's this moment where Cece flashes this lightning bolt symbol, this green symbol, and suddenly there's a black and white flashback that happens. And this ties directly into the overarching narrative of the series. I'm curious what you thought of all of that.
Yeah, because I haven't got to the actual reveal yet. But
it
seems like Elvis was experimented on, or something in the army, or something happened. I'm not sure.
That's exactly it. Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they end up going out to the Manson Ranch. They find ramblings drawn on the wall talking about Helter Skelter. And eventually they find Bobby Ray on one of those beds that collapse into the wall.
Have you ever seen those in real life?
Not in real life. Only ever in movies or in pictures. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so weird.
But obviously, they did exist for a while.
I guess, yeah.
They end up capturing Elvis, CC, Bobby Ray, and Scatter. But Manson starts talking about how he and Elvis are sort of a like person. Says, we're the same. We're both electric personalities making music to change the world, and sort of strums and sings horribly off-key.
He wants him to join them, essentially.
Yeah. But what's interesting is how this eventually ties into the overarching kind of conflict of the series. I won't spoil too much for you, but the gist of the later part of the series is that Elvis's power through his music to connect people ends up being manipulated in a way and used for nefarious purposes. And this is just sort of a less competent version of that Manson wants. But it's actually foreshadowing this, what's actually going to be happening later in the series. But basically, they break their way out. And what do you think of all this action at the Manson family ranch?
I like that one joke where Manson wanted Elvis to join them, and Elvis says something about if he wanted to hang out with some drugged out hippies, he would have hung out with what did he say?
I'd say if I wanted to hang out with a bunch of shitbag hippies, I'd return Dennis Hopper's phone call.
Oh, God damn it.
I'm not so much angry as I am disappointed. Blame myself, really.
The King Pinky goes down, man!
Hey, you owe me a new badge, dickhead.
Which is funny because there was a brief period where Elvis did hang out with Dennis Hopper.
Yeah. Wasn't there also somebody takes his badge and he's like, "You don't look like a Shelby County sheriff" or something like that? Which was so deep. That's crazy. But anyway, Manson shoots him.
Yeah, and, Manson shoots Elvis. And the way that it's framed makes it look like maybe he shot him in the head. But as it turns out, he just shot him in the chest, and it instead hit Elvis's hidden police badge, which blocked it.
Shelby County badge.
And so Cece cuts herself free, Scatter breaks free, just sort of crushes the chair that he's tied to, and together they all fight the hippies, and it's this huge action scene. But as they go through, they realize that they're causing injury to all of the hippies, and they're not going down. They're zombie hippies.
Yeah.
Because they're so drugged out, they just can't feel anything.
Wait, are they strung out, you're saying?
Yeah.
They should have added that. That would have been awesome. But yeah, they eventually they overcome them, and Scatter uses a bunch of horses to basically mow them down. Mm-hmm. It's just fun. And I like that how Manson's like, "No, you killed my, was it sister, wife, or whatever, daughter?" And I was like, man, that's messed up.
But everything ends well. They end up defeating the Manson family, and Elvis gets back in time to film the 68 special. And If I Can Dream begins to play as we see Priscilla and Elvis sitting on the couch watching the TV special. You see Birdie lying in bed, and there's this nice Easter egg visually where she has photos on her bedstand. Did you notice what those photos are?
One of them was Gladys, I saw.
One is Gladys and Elvis. The other two are Birdie. One is her with Dr. King, and the other is her with Bobby Kennedy.
Oh, okay.
Senator Kennedy.
Nice.
Which were obviously, had been assassinated both that year. And I mentioned on the last episode, just seeing the music video part of it, it does still, to me, feel, I get a little iffy on it. I'm not still comfortable with it, given that the song was directly in response to actual turmoil in the 1960s and social upheaval. But it's fine, I guess. I'm not offended by it, And then lastly, there's just a very quick sort of post scene with the commander in the shadows at the tiki bar talking with Cece. And then the episode dedicated to the loving memory of Lisa Marie Presley.
Right. Nice. Which seems odd considering the way the way the episode is, and with the profanity, but it's fine. It was obviously Lisa Marie must have seen some of the footage. So
I'm sure before she passed, she was not necessarily involved, but I'm sure that she was getting briefings on, what was being in, because this has been in the works since 2019.
Yeah. That commander, total Nick Fury, if anyone's interested in
that scene feels very much like, what was it was at the end of, Iron Man or Incredible Hulk?
Iron Man.
Yeah. It feels very much like that. Yeah.
And then Don Cheadle, of course, plays War Machine, Iron Man's sidekick in those films. So there's that connection. And he's going to be in Iron Wars which is coming up from Marvel soon.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was episode 1. Good intro.
Sorry about that.
Oh my God, Elvis. That was amazing. What was all that?
Oh, that, yeah. You know, that was a rehearsal. It's what I'm doing for my new TV show.
Jesus, is that guy okay?
Oh, yeah, that's just fake blood, everybody. And that there's fake, well, whatever that is.
What's the new show called?
So just in the interest of time, obviously the pilot has a lot of setup that it needs to do. We're going to kind of blitz through episodes 2 and 3 here. But we'll definitely want to, when we do a proper series review analysis, there are points in these that I'll definitely want to double back on. But we'll just quickly give an overview of episodes 2 and 3 and our thoughts on it. So episode 2 is Fuck You Vegas.
You know, you could have said F you Vegas.
Elvis so they jump ahead a little bit in the timeline because obviously that was 68. Now all of a sudden we're in 1969, and Elvis, the description of the episode is Elvis returns to Vegas and encounters Howard Hughes, a gang of evil spies and a nuclear airplane, while Birdie deals with Scatter's reckless behavior.
Now here's where they kind of veer off, because he's performing Viva Las Vegas on stage in 69, which never happened. But do you think the producers knew and they were like, whatever, it works?
Yes, of course they knew. There is actually an interview out there with them where they acknowledge that, like, song choice wise, they also kind of had to lean into a little bit of what people expect. So when Elvis goes to Vegas, you have to play Viva Las Vegas because that's what the average non-Elvis fan viewer is going to expect.
And this is a 70s Elvis, even though he didn't wear these.
Yeah, he wears these jumpsuits, and one of the jumpsuits he even wears is the Madison Square Garden jumpsuit later on in the episode. But this first one is just sort of a dragon-themed jumpsuit at the start when he's singing Viva Las Vegas. And
he has these flashbacks.
You very briefly see, as it's showing, you know, the sights of Vegas, there's a quick cutaway to where Colonel Parker, it's the only time he shows up in the show, but you see him down on the casino floor hawking pictures of Elvis, and it's actually a live action picture of the real Elvis. And Parker has one of his famous white coats with all the wording on it.
Yeah,
so,
with the titles of his films.
Yeah, this one just says Elvis, you know, live at the International in person.
We didn't mention it, but Bobby Ray wears a blue Hawaii shirt.
It's true, and it is the correct logo for Blue Hawaii from the poster.
Is there any reason for that? Did they even address it?
Again, I think they were just wanting to show that he's more of a fan who happens to be hanging out with Elvis than like a member of the Memphis Mafia.
It's almost like a Felton Jarvis.
Which is not involved in the music side of things, but yeah. But yeah, so Elvis is singing Viva Las Vegas, and
he beats up Ronnie Todd.
he gets triggered to have a flashback on the stage to this, you know, military brainwashing that he went through, and he ends up beating the shit out of Ronnie Todd.
Which is fun because the episode's dedicated to him.
And Ronnie voices himself.
Yes.
They have Ronnie Tutt actually he only has one line where Elvis apologizes to Ronnie, but Ronnie says it's all good.
I know, that was good.
It was funny, like the fact that they got Ronnie into it, and clearly Ronnie put his stamp on it. And Ronnie, like animated Ronnie Tutt, looks like Ronnie Tutt. Like the resemblance is really good.
Yeah.
One thing that I really appreciate about that is that they use this in such a way to kind of poke at the idea of Elvis doing the karate on stage as though it was triggered by something and not just Elvis showing off during his routine.
Elvis, not bad for a white boy.
Oh, you know it, Red.
Groovy, baby. Love the kung fu.
Yeah, Sammy.
Careful with those hips, King. You'll put an eye out. And Sammy only has one left.
Hey, thank you, guys. Thanks for coming. Well, hey, Scylla, you made it.
Great show, Sutton. I loved it.
And love you.
The karate was different.
Yeah, sorry about that, Ronnie.
All good.
Walk it off, big guy.
He's gonna be okay, right?
Oh, shit, yeah. Ronnie's a pro.
A few more celebrity cameos in Vegas. Red Fox is in there, and Sammy Davis Jr.
Don Rickles.
Don Rickles is in there, yeah. But Elvis is obviously worried about what triggered that, weird, episode of beating up his drummer. But Cece is hiding and waiting for him in his dressing room inside of his jumpsuit closet. And they have some repartee sort of back and forth where she reveals that her mom was actually not very good to her and that her mom is kind of a scumbag. Yeah. And that comes out to play later in the series. I will say you do get to meet Cece's mom later in the series. Okay. So they're establishing that early here. But as they're going off, because she's got to take Elvis to meet the commander, Scatter is being left alone in the Vegas suite. And so the B plot of the episode is that Scatter basically just completely loses all of Elvis's money. Yeah. And Birdie has to gamble it back, and win it back. Is basically the B plot.
Why was it $300,000 all he had there?
I don't know. That's the limit on his line of credit at the International. Yeah, which is weird.
We also get "Hello, I Love You" by the Doors while Scatter's going crazy.
Yes, which then transitions into them actually listening to the Doors while they're driving through the desert to go see the commander. And Cece is a huge fan of the Doors and Jim Morrison. And Elvis is, turn that shit off.
The hippie nonsense.
Yeah, yeah.
Hello, I love you, won't you tell me your name? Hello, I love you, let me jump in your game. Hello, I love you, won't you tell me your name? Hello, I love you, let me jump in your game. She holds her head so high, like a statue in the sky. Her arms are wicked and her legs are long. When she moves, my brain screams out this song.
The A plot with Elvis supposed to be going to see the commander ends up going awry because they end up meeting up with Howard Hughes at the airfield. What do you know of Howard Hughes at this point in his life?
At this point, not really. I know he was eccentric. He bankrolled a bunch of films in the 30s, like Scarface. Mm-hmm. But apparently he was really, really rich, and he went really insane.
Yeah. Basically what ended up happening was that in the 60s, he just started having this very, sad mental decline where he basically became sort of a
recluse.
Yeah, a recluse and very eccentric. And one of the little details that they show of him is that he's got these long fingernails, and he wears, rather than shoes, he wears Kleenex boxes, which is a reference to the fact that Howard Hughes apparently collected Kleenex boxes during the late 50s and into the 60s.
Yeah, I remember The Simpsons did a parody of him, and he was wearing tissue boxes. Mr. Burns was the Howard Hughes character, and he wasn't cutting his nails. He had long nails and his beard, and he's walking around with tissue boxes and talking about the spruce goose.
Yeah, and that's basically what this is. This is the depiction of Howard Hughes. But weirdly, Howard Hughes, as a member of the organization TCB, he's essentially Q from James Bond. He's the gadgets guy. He's the tech guy. Yeah. He's doing all of the weird science experimentation and all of that. And so he's been working on this plane, which is essentially a replica of the Spruce Goose, that's like a mobile TCB headquarters, and that's what's there in the plane. Well, that ends up getting hijacked by people who are basically what they think are Russian spies or Russian assassins. It feels like it goes nowhere because it takes until almost the last episode of the series for you to actually figure out the organization that these guys are working for. But essentially what you need to know is that it's an organization that is out to damage Elvis because the evil mastermind blames Elvis for something that has happened. But here these henchmen are basically just depicted as unaffiliated Russian spies. So the evil spies basically kidnap Howard Hughes and steal the plane. They lock Elvis and Cece away, and eventually they get ejected from the plane and have to make their way back to get to Howard Hughes and kind of rescue him. Because this evil organization is essentially going to take the nuclear reactor that powers the not Spruce Goose and turn it into a nuclear bomb to blow up Vegas, which is revealed to be how TCB funds its practices as an organization. It uses Vegas as a front.
Yeah.
And so Buddy Ray and Howard Hughes have to disable it. And that's where Buddy Ray's like contribution comes in, as well as like flying one of the other like small planes, like kind of a crop duster, to get him close enough to go on there to get back on the plane.
Weird thing where Howard Hughes said he tried to be he thought Spider-Man was real, so he injected himself with radiation.
Yeah.
And then it turns out now whenever he urinates, it's like acid, and that's how they escape. I was like, what?
What did you think of all of this mid-show action?
It was fine. I wasn't as engaged as I was the first episode. I don't know, something about it just like some of the comedy kind of fell flat here, but it was fine. It was just, you're trying to get from point A to point B, but it was okay.
Yeah,
I didn't really get a lot of the Howard Hughes stuff. It was okay.
Yeah, for me, this was the weaker of the first three. Yeah. The weakest of the first three. It's not really so much laugh out loud funny because it's doing so much work to set up things that also don't pay off until later. So you don't even necessarily, at the time you're watching it, appreciate what exactly it is that they're setting up. It's doing a lot and not actually making it that engaging. Eventually, they end up rescuing Howard Hughes. Birdie wins all of the money back that Scatter lost.
Yeah, and we had a racist dealer, and she takes them down. It was fine, but it didn't really add too much for me.
It's almost more of a return to status quo. Like, the whole episode is much ado about nothing, really. Howard Hughes gets kidnapped, and they have to rescue him. This episode is one that you really, honestly, can't even quite fully appreciate what it does do in terms of plot progression until like your second watch of the series. There is one interesting other historical note on Howard Hughes is that as they're going through the desert, there's a cold open at the start of the episode where you see Elvis crawling through the desert and he like comes up on this rattlesnake and he's out of bullets. Well, as it turns out, at the end of the episode, he actually doesn't really have a real gun. He has a taser, and he ends up tasing the snake, and then they hitchhike on the highway, and they get picked up by a guy named Melvin. And I'm curious if you're familiar with the story of Melvin Dumar.
Yeah, Melvin Dumar, who said he claimed that he gave Hughes a ride in the late 60s, and then somehow he ended up in his will, which was apparently a fake.
Yeah. So there's this story that Melvin Dumar found Howard Hughes wandering the desert in 1967, and because he rescued him, he was supposedly left this huge part of Howard Hughes' estate in a will that was found in like the archives of the Mormon Church, but then was later ruled to be a forgery. But yeah, it's a deep cut that Melvin shows up here.
Deep cut.
Yeah. You really have to already know the history of that to appreciate, because otherwise it's just like, oh, it's a guy that's picking them up and giving them a ride back to Vegas.
I think he says too he's going to give them money.
Yeah,
Hughes says.
Yeah.
What? Howard? Is that you?
You idiots know each other?
Oh yeah. Melvin found me on the side of the road a few years ago and gave me a ride into town. So I'm leaving him all my money when I die.
Just for giving you a ride? Wait, what do I get for the handy?
Just take me to my hotel, will you?
Yeah, absolutely. Any chance we could swing by and meet my boss first?
No, I'm done with you people.
Well, but...
Done.
At the very end, Cece's like, oh, well, we got to go see the commander, and Elvis declines, and they turn on the radio, and it's the Doors again, and that's the end of the episode. And this one they dedicate, as you mentioned, to Ronnie Tutt.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is overall the weaker of the first three. largely because, as mentioned, it's setting up things that take a very long time to pay off, and you don't even know it at the time that it's going to be important.
Sure.
But episode 3 is where the plot really starts to move. Cocaine Tuesdays is episode 3. And this is set during the filming of Change of Habit. Now, chronologically, is completely backwards.
It just makes sense. Like this so the whole thing going on is the moon landing, which took place in July, right?
Of 1969. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when was the filming of Change of Habit?
The filming of Change of Habit was earlier in the spring of 69 in like April.
Yeah,
March and
it's
April.
Close enough. I think it makes sense.
It's close, and again, we're not looking for historical accuracy necessarily, but it's weird that the Cocaine Tuesdays Change of Habit episode comes after Elvis is in Vegas, because the Vegas stuff starts in August.
Yeah, they're loose with the timeline.
So they're very loose with the timeline. But again, like, Elvis is a secret agent, and he's killing and swearing, and there's scatter doing drugs, so
they're not going for accuracy.
No. But essentially, the description on Netflix for this one is: while filming Change of Habit, Elvis becomes inspired by the moon landing and sets out to try and stop a major drug deal despite CeCe's objections. And it opens with David Bowie's Space Odyssey.
Right, which is fun.
And Elvis is narrating about how essentially he feels like he's not accomplished enough. Like, there are people out there who are actually really making an impact on history, and he's feeling self-conscious about not having like gone to the moon, nothing important like that. He's like, I'm just acting in movies and singing music. And then it cuts over to introduce the director of Change of Habit. Who's the director of Change of Habit, Gurdip?
Baz Luhrmann.
It's Baz Luhrmann.
Crazy.
Okay, listen, I don't want to abstract your process here, but I'm looking at the script and I'm pretty sure, there are 0 of those words in it.
True, but only because the words in the script are dog shit.
All right, now look, just forget the words. Ride the truth, buddy. You're Dr. John Carpenter, idealistic ghetto physician. You help everybody, the poor, the sick, the hungry, blah, 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 blah. You're Jesus, mate. You're the journey. Your journey is the journey of America. And at some point, you make out with a nun. I mean, how good is that?
Yeah, well, listen up here, rookie. America doesn't make out with nuns.
Oh, yeah, well, that's America's loss, isn't it?
Now, I wonder how far down did they decide on this?
Oh, man. Well, Baz Luhrmann, we knew he was working on the movie as early as, I think it was announced in 2014, that he was starting work on the movie. And then this show was announced in 2019. So the film was well under construction by that point. And then obviously throughout the development of this series, the film was also being made.
Yeah, and it wouldn't take much. I mean, he could record his audio on Skype or whatever.
Yeah,
so
in a day. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is just so much fun. Like, the way that they sort of like mock Change of Habit. Like, I love Change of Habit, but the way that Baz says it, for as much like we try to take Elvis's film seriously and within its cultural context and history, like, we also have to acknowledge the absurdity of Elvis's career as well.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that they have him in a film where he is like the Jesus analog and the nun character has to decide between Elvis with the initials JC and actual Jesus and being a nun, it is sort of an absurd premise for a film. And
I like the Mary Tyler Moore's there too.
Yeah, they actually depict like an animated version of Mary Tyler Moore. But yeah, what do you think of how this episode goes over the course of this? Because he decides that he's upset, and so he decides to go stop all these drug deals that are going on. All these
it
all
was
these
fine.
cocaine.
It's another action-heavy episode. It's kind of like the second one, but I liked it a little better.
Yeah.
But it's fine.
And part of the reason that I think that this one works better is that it does layer in stuff along the way. And the things that it sets up aren't as subtle as they were in the second episode, as what was set up in the second episode. Essentially what happens is that Scatter has been doing cocaine, but he made a promise to Elvis to only do cocaine on Tuesdays.
Yeah,
on
like
cocaine,
tacos.
Yeah, like Taco Tuesday. And Elvis decides that he's going to put a stop to that and decides to go track down the dealer and ends up meeting this dealer called Flyboy, who is dressed like, I mean, the most stereotypical, like, 70s pimp. Elvis basically steals Flyboy's car and costume to go in disguise to go meet with the people who have been supplying Flyboy with all of the cocaine. And
you can say Elvis almost dressed like a pimp as well in the 70s when he was on stage.
It's true.
Very, very close.
It's
I wonder
untrue.
if that's where that joke goes, where he takes Flyboy's clothes and Flyboy's like, "Wow, you look better in these than I did." And Elvis is like, "Was that ever in doubt?" or something like that.
Well, I mean, and throughout the series, there's a lot of moments where it's self-acknowledging Elvis's attractiveness, and that like there's a lot of times where he gets into costumes that would in other people's cases look really ridiculous, but he still kind of look like they go, "Oh, you still look good in that," and he's like, "Well, of course I do. Like I'm Elvis."
So then Elvis and Scatter go down to find the Flyboy supplier.
Yeah. And Cece, as it turns out, is already there because the commander has told her that Elvis has left the set of Change of Habit, and he needs Elvis to be on set. And so she's been sent to retrieve him. So she is already there when he gets there, and she tries to tell him, no matter how many drug dealers you take down, this is not actually going to make that big of a difference. And your little vigilante things are not going to make a difference.
I'm getting annoyed with Cece at this point, so I don't know how it is later, but I'm like, she keeps saying what he's doing is not making a difference, and then she doesn't like his music. I'm like, why do we care about this character?
Like I said, there's a plot reason why she probably feels that way. It's a jokey plot reason, but in the cartoon logic sense, without spoiling, when you find out some of her backstory, it goes, oh, maybe that explains why she doesn't actually like Elvis, because she's connected with someone else who also doesn't like Elvis. I'll say that much.
Anyway, and then they start busting up the drug dealers, and what song do they play?
They play Change of Habit.
Guys, get in here!
If you're in old habits, changes are a-coming. These are changing days. And if your days in the sidewalk things going on, what you need is
You know this shit's not gonna make you feel any better, right?
Agree to disagree.
That's so fun. How ironic is that song here?
Yeah. And to be honest, this might actually be my favorite action scene from the whole series.
It works really well.
Yeah, but how does it end?
Still, I'm just saying. It ends with an explosion, and basically cocaine is falling from the sky like snow and onto a children's playground, and the kids are getting high on coke, which is nuts. Crazy.
And especially when you put that in the context of the film Change of Habit, which is this film that is supposed to be like Elvis is like the hip inner city doctor who's like taking care of like orphans and stuff like that, and like kids, and you have like this really wholesome like Have a Happy and stuff like that. And it's just, to have that contrasted is, again, it's the audacity of doing it that I respect.
And I like that the animation changes to a bit different to depict them as being high.
Yeah, it gets very psychedelic.
But yeah, essentially they track down a shipment and they blow up the boat that contained the shipment. But it was fine, and then they make their way back right to the movie set.
Yeah, they end up making their way back to the movie set, and essentially what ends up being revealed is that the commander basically funded the production of Change of Habit because he wanted Elvis on set right next to the set for the moon landing. And it's revealed that TCB is actually staging the moon landing on the soundstage next to Change of Habit. And there is a nice little bit of backstory that comes into play later that's established here that Scatter actually had some NASA training experience as like a astronaut chimpanzee and actually has sort of a rivalry with the guys who actually did land on the moon, like Neil Armstrong. And there's just this little quick throwaway gag that ends up establishing that there's some cocaine that Buddy Ray wipes off into a batch of Tang, and it turns out that Neil Armstrong actually drank that Tang, causing him to be like really high later when it's time to actually go film the moon landing. And so the commander needs Elvis to basically go into the suit and be the quote-unquote first man on the moon on the set of the moon landing.
So he gets to do what he wanted to do in the beginning.
Yeah, so he gets to do that, even though they obviously have fake Neil Armstrong's voice on there. The B-plot of this whole thing is that Bobby Ray is filling in for Elvis as his stand-in on the set of Change of Habit and is not able to perform. Like, he just can't do the lines. He doesn't understand cues.
He's making Baz really angry.
Baz Luhrmann is getting so upset. And then by the end of it, when they all get back, Mary Tyler Moore just goes, fuck this, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Line. You don't fucking have one. Just stand there. Listen, I didn't bloody well spend 12 years getting a PhD in fucking film theory to be thwarted by a fucking moron, mate.
Oh, I hear you. That sounds frustrating. Who's the moron?
Ugh, fuck this. I'm out of here.
Oh my God, did Mary Tyler Moore just say fuck? Officially love her.
Did we even acknowledge CC Ryder's name?
No, we didn't.
Or
really
is that
talk,
so obvious?
Like, yeah, it's so obvious that it's a reference to the song CC Ryder.
And we didn't mention Walter Cronkite is also being paid to broadcast this as it's being real. It's supposed to be real.
Yeah. So that's one of the very few celebrity cameos in this one.
I had a question for you. Were you upset when they kind of dissed Change of Habit? Because the commander's like, we funded this piece of crap junk movie that we just made up. Because you're such a big fan of Change of Habit. Did that sting?
I mean, as I was just kind of talking about, like, I guess some people could get upset. I'm to the point where I don't see the point anymore of getting upset. This is the 21st century. Elvis has been dead for 45 years. He's the best-selling solo artist of all time. He's one of the most important people of the 20th century. The movie about him was one of the top-grossing films and one of the highest-rated and most celebrated films of last year. His legacy is going to be fine. I think that we can take a joke. And, like, Elvis himself in real life was self-deprecating. He poked fun at his movies. He poked fun at a lot of his own absurdities. He understood how weird it was to be Elvis Presley. And I just don't think that we need to keep putting him up on this pedestal where no one can joke about anything about him. And especially not an official project like this that actually takes the teeth out of the bite that comes from so many critics that would use these things to attack Elvis and try to cut him down. This is clearly people who love Elvis, warts and all, laughing with each other rather than laughing at Elvis.
Yeah. And then we forgot to mention that Stanley Kubrick is the director of the fake moon landing.
Which is part of an old conspiracy theory that Kubrick, directed the fake moon landing. Yeah. So, again, it's leaning into the old pop culture conspiracy theories surrounding, again, JFK, moon landing, Elvis, being alive, all of those things.
Yeah.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Ground control to Major Tom.
Welcome to TCB.
But yeah, so that's the end of episode 3. Basically, Elvis lands on the moon, quote unquote.
Yeah. Yeah, so far I think overall the series is pretty good. It's not like, oh my god, this is the best thing ever, but it's just a novelty to see Elvis as a main character in this ultra-violent series. Yeah. And obviously the music's nice, which is a good thing. So, but I gotta watch the whole thing first to get a better understanding of it.
But yeah, I mean, overall, on these first three, there's a lot of work setting up all of the players, and it's really not until you have that third episode where things start to move a little bit. But then once you hit, I think, episode 4, it gets like the momentum really starts to pick up, because it's not trying to be just, Elvis going off doing his vigilante thing and then TCB kind of in the background. It actually becomes more about the actual story of Elvis being in TCB and like what's going on with these flashbacks that he's having, and how does Robert Goulet tie into all of that.
Cool. All right. Well, let me. I mean, obviously, we're going to have to go back to this and cover the rest. So we'll probably do that.
But yeah, I enjoy it. It's as I said, there are problems with it. I don't think it's a 10 out of 10 at all, but it is fun. So I'm enjoying it.
Awesome. Hopefully people enjoy it as well. They can let us know what they think. All right. So should we head to Song of the Week?
Let's do it.
Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Elvis Presley. Well, get out of that kitchen and rattle those pots and pans.
What a night. Ooh, what a night it was. It really was such a night. Well, when Monday comes, she's Tuesday. When Tuesday comes, she's Wednesday. And we're in the heart of Rome. He talked and talked, and I heard him say, I know that you've been told it's not fair to tease. It's the edge of reality.
All right, so mine is also not very in-depth, but it's 1958's Steadfast, Loyal, and True from the film King Creole.
Farewell, Royal High School, we'll remember you. Dear alma mater, we're steadfast, loyal, and true. As we go onward in the lives we lead, your light will guide us. Your motto...
I think we might have even gotten almost every King Creole song, maybe, because we've done a lot of them.
In fact, I could tell you right now, I can pull up my list of, let's see, we haven't done Hard-Headed Woman.
Which is the most popular song. We did them all. So this was written by Jerry Leiber and Mike Stoller. I don't think I need to get into their backgrounds because we've covered them to death. But essentially, they wrote some of Elvis's biggest hits like Hound Dog, Love Me, Jailhouse Rock, Don't, Treat Me Nice. So this song is interesting. It works well, I think, in the film itself, as Elvis gives an earnest performance. But outside of that, most listeners would be like, wait, what is this? This is one of those songs, kind of like Husky Dusky Day, that really should have stayed in context of the film. Like, do we need a studio release for this? Mm-hmm. It's a fine a cappella performance Elvis gives in the film, but then later in the album, it gets fleshed out by the Jordanaires for the soundtrack. Yeah, I don't know. I'm surprised Elvis was okay with this being released, although he was probably so caught up with the draft and, being in the Army, he didn't really care.
Yeah, I'm sure.
He had other pressing things on his mind. Still, it's a good song in the film. I love Ronnie or Cameron Jones's reaction to the lyrics about loyalty and the motto. It's of the fake Royal High School. It's like she's reflecting on simple high school years, almost longing for those days.
Nostalgia.
Yeah, like you could read it in her face, right, when he's singing it.
Dear alma mater, we're steadfast, loyal, and true.
Come on, kid. Jazz it up, huh?
Farewell, Royal High School, we'll remember you. Dear alma mater, we're steadfast, loyal, and true.
Atta boy, kid. That's real nice, kid. Real nice.
Well, it's the contrast of the innocence of high school and of someone who's that young with what she's been through in her life.
Yeah, her current station in life.
Yeah.
I can't remember if I saw the film first or got the soundtrack. I'm pretty sure I saw the film. So I really didn't have a problem when I heard it on the soundtrack. But man, does it like stand out. Not in a good way in that soundtrack. I'm thinking Leiber and Stoller were asked to come out with some kind of like school anthem for the film, and specifically for this scene, and they quickly wrote this out. Just as an aside, there is a Royal High School in Scotland, and I totally use the song if I were them. It'd be fun. What do you think about this, or when you first heard it, what did you think?
Yeah, I'm fairly certain I first heard this on the 50s master set, and it's fine.
You weren't like, what is this?
No, it's serving its purpose in the film, which is, it's supposed to be his school song, and as a, sort of pastiche of, alma mater type songs, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's certainly not one of Leiber and Stoller's finest songs that they wrote either.
I don't think it was. I don't think they were.
No.
They set out to make like a great song. I think they just did something quickly.
Yeah, and I think probably the only reason that they added the Jordanaires on there was just to flesh it out so it didn't sound so just raw and unpolished, for the album.
Right.
But
do you think it should have stayed in the film itself?
I don't think so necessarily, because it was in the film, and if they hadn't included it, then you would have had Elvis fans going, well, why wasn't that released?
Of course.
And there's more to it than obviously than like it is a full song. It's not like Husky Dusky Day where it's just a couple lines. It is like a full proper song. It's just a short song.
Yeah. So they attempted the song at Radio Recorder Studio B in Hollywood in January 16th of 58. They did 6 takes, with 6 being the master. So this version wasn't used, and it's just Elvis and Dudley Books on piano. I don't mind this one. I guess they wanted something less rehearsed and more of like spur of the moment in the film. So maybe originally they thought there'd be someone at the bar accompanying Elvis. But then it would lose the whole plot of Elvis being forced to sing rather than being a performance. So I'm thinking that's probably what the thinking was.
Yeah.
Because in the film, he is forced to sing, so it's not like he rehearsed this or anything. And it would be weird if there's a piano player with him.
Recalling precious moments within your hallowed halls. Farewell, Royal High School, we'll remember you. Dear alma mater, we're steadfast, loyal, and true.
And Ronnie's actually the one who wants him to sing something about, school and alma mater and all this. Rah, rah, rah. So they went back to the song again on February 11th, but this time it was at the Paramount Sound Stages, and this time Elvis is just doing the song in a cappella, and it works much better in context of the film. They did this in one take, and this would be the master that would later dub. And then there's also a movie version that only runs 41 seconds. It's just the first verse repeated twice, faster the second time. Because remember in the bar, the guy goes, "Come on, kid, jazz it up a bit." So he does it slightly more quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's believed that Elvis just did this live while filming, or they could have spliced the undubbed master. But I think it's just Elvis singing live because of the way he says "royal." It's different. So, like, if you listen to Elvis saying "royal" in the film as opposed to "royal" in the one that came out in the soundtrack, it's a little bit different. So, I think Elvis just sang it live.
Yeah,
when they were
that
filming.
makes sense to me.
Farewell, Royal High School, we'll remember you. Dear alma mater, we're steadfast, loyal, and true.
Then finally, on June 19th, 1958, at RCA Studio B in Nashville, they brought in the Jordanaires to overdub Elvis's a cappella master, which is weird. Like, this Know Nothing song was tackled 3 times in 3 different studios. That's so weird. Anyway, this is the version that everyone's probably heard, as it was on the King Creole soundtrack, and it's fine. And I like the Jordanaires backing Elvis song, but again, out of the context of the film, it's just odd to listen to. And finally, there's actually a demo of this done by Jimmy Breedlove, I believe.
Who held Royal High School, who will remember you, the dear alma mater, where steadfast, loyal, and true.
It's odd that this song required a demo, but it's fine. It's very much sounds like Elvis's first attempt with the piano with Dudley Brooks. So it seems like they just kind of copied this demo.
Yeah, which that's all they needed to do. You know.
Yeah. I don't think they need to put a lot of effort into it.
No, it's not very complicated. So
the song was released on the King Creole soundtrack on August 10th, 1958. And as you said, it's probably included just to fill out that soundtrack. But it wasn't on any of those King Creole EPs. And really, there has been no cover because I don't think there's a reason to. I wonder if some ETA ever performed this. I'm guessing probably.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Absolutely. There's been ETAs that have performed it.
Why?
Well, I mean, even like, I don't know. The Jamie Kelly, when he was doing the Elvis thing, he did the run where he did the world record performing all of Elvis's songs by memory. So that would have naturally had to have been included in that.
Ah, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Wow, that would take quite a bit to memorize all his songs. Anyway. Yeah, but that's my song of the week. I'm sure we had to eventually cover this song, so I'm glad I tackled it today.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, and that's our episode for the... Thank you. This is our episode for the week. Let us know what you guys thought of Agent Elvis. If you watched a couple episodes, if you watched all of them like Justin Gosman here, he threw away his TCBcast editing responsibilities and just to watch the show. Why not? You're entitled to it.
And again, just want to reiterate before we wrap, like, if you don't like the show, that's okay. You shouldn't. Like, there's good reason not to like the show.
Yeah.
This is
not everyone's going to enjoy it.
This is even more so than Baz Luhrmann's movie. This is not for everyone.
Yeah, I think you're right. This is even more so divisive because this Elvis is so different.
Yeah. So
cool. All right. Well, until next time, it's a hot time in Florida
and a rainy night in Georgia.
You've been listening to the TCBcast, an unofficial Elvis fan podcast. Justin Gosman and Gurdip Ladar have left the building.
Someone must have stomped on his head with those blue suede shoes.
Thank you and good night.